Then let's get to it. So good afternoon, guys. So thank you all for coming today. And also I hope you all are currently doing very well despite the pandemic. And also thank you for ISOS for arranging this Public Geek Talk event and for giving me the chance to do a presentation today. So let me first introduce myself again. So my name is Aga. I am a software quality analyst or quality assurance at ISOS. And I've been working here for the last 2 years. And today I'll be doing my presentation, which is regarding testing in a real SDLC, where I'll be presenting like how we test software in Icehouse. Okay. All right. So before I get into the contents, it helps that we can be clear on the objective of the presentation here. So you know what you'll be getting by the end of this presentation. So by the end of this presentation, you should all be able to describe like how testing activities are done in an Icehouse project. So this presentation serves more as a sharing session for me to you guys regarding my knowledge here at ISOS, and also how and in hopes that this presentation will expand your knowledge by a bit, so that you know you are more familiar with the different testing processes which are currently in the industry, particularly in a company like ISOS, a mobile app developer company. All right. In order to support this main objective, I'm going to discuss these 3 main points here. So number 1 is regarding the context of the situation, which is I'm going to be explaining like a bit about Icehouse and also what types of projects that we've worked on in the past. And once we get a sense of how is it like working at Icehouse, we'll move on to the second point, which is testing in the real software development lifecycle, where I'll be explaining like the different phases which are involved in an SDLC at Icehouse and how testing fits into each of those phases. And finally, to bring the point home and to cement your knowledge, I'll be ending off the presentation with a real-life example of a project that we worked on in the past, where I'll be explaining like how we do testing since the beginning of the project up until the end. All right. So, yep, let's get into the main point here, the first point, which is the context of the situation. So, a little bit about Icehouse. So, Icehouse is a mobile app developer company, but we also develop web apps too. And we're a B2B company, our main business model. So what does it mean? So this means that Icehouse doesn't really have its own software or mobile app. Instead, we actually develop mobile apps or websites to help for other people. So if you guys have a mobile app or a website that needs to be developing, then you can actually work with Icehouse. And we serve other businesses specifically. And we've been present in Indonesia for the last 8 years, since 2012. And over those 8 years, we've managed to serve more than 65 customers globally. So our clients not only come from Indonesia, but also outside of Indonesia. One example of that was being a project that we did with Paramount Pictures, where we made an app to promote the release of a movie called Star Trek Into Darkness. And on the right side here, you can see like the locations in which Icehouse is currently present. However, basically, our main base of operations is still in South Jakarta or in Indonesia. So that's where our main development process actually is currently happening, right? And that's a bit about Icehouse. If you guys want to know more about us and like look at our complete portfolio and whether we're recruiting or not, you can look at our website here, which I've mentioned here, www.icehousecorp.com. So that's a bit about Icehouse. So what types of projects have we worked on in the past? So basically, the types of projects that we've worked on in the past are in general big and complex. And in order to illustrate this, I have 2 main examples of projects that we've worked on, which are Bluebird and Lion Parcel. So Bluebird is an app which is used to book a taxi online and basically like make your taxi booking process a lot easier. So it's very similar to apps like GoCar and also Grab Taxi, while the Lion Parcel app is used to make delivering parcels easier. So you can actually book a courier online, and the courier can can go into your desired location or home, pick up the parcel, and then finish up that delivery process themselves. Okay, so these are the two main applications that I'll be explaining. And after this, I'm going to be describing a few main data points that could illustrate like how big and complex these projects are. Starting with Bluebird. So in order to find out like how complex this project is, you can actually look at the feature scope. So in terms of feature scope, I'm going to be explaining like in terms of the number of platforms that the project is developed on, and also the types of features that we've developed in the app. So for Bluebird, we've developed on in total like about 3 platforms. So there's an iOS consumer app, there's also an Android consumer app, and also a call center web app. And I think there's also an IoT app for drivers too. And all of these platforms, so there's a lot of work being put in to develop on 3 of these platforms, and all of these platforms interact with one another too, which makes like the project a bit more complex. And that's in terms of platform. And what about in terms of features? So in terms of features, there are lots of complex features in Bluebird. You can actually book a taxi online and like see where the drivers are. But the ones that I want to highlight are these 2 here, which are cashless taxi payment and also digital wallet integration. So why are these 2 features quite complex? That's because for these 2 features, we needed to integrate with third-party providers too in order to provide these payment services in our app. So we not only needed to integrate with Bluebird in the development of the application, but we also need to interact and integrate with teams from outside iSauce and also Bluebird. So for example, for cashless taxi payment, we integrated with credit card providers, and for digital wallet integration, we also integrated with digital wallet providers like Dana and Link Aja. So we interacted with them, with the teams at Dana and Link Aja to like facilitate their payment processes in our apps. So that's regarding Bluebird. What about Lion Parcel? So for Lion Parcel, we've developed the app in total on 3 platforms here. So there's an iOS consumer app and Android consumer app too. And also there's an Android driver app, which is used by the courier to deliver parcels and process those delivery parcel orders, right? And these 3 apps also need to interact with each other too. And aside from the platforms, we also can look at the features too. So for Lion Parcel, these are the features that I want to highlight. In the Lion Parcel app, we've done an e-commerce integration where we integrated with a third-party e-commerce provider, which means like other than interacting with Lion Parcel, we needed to integrate with an e-commerce third-party provider and also integrating with the merchants that we want to facilitate in that e-commerce feature, which makes like the project scope a whole lot bigger and also complex. We also had done a WhatsApp integration, which is used by the end users to book a delivery of parcel by using the WhatsApp by sending a message to the Lion Parcel business account instead of booking the parcel delivery through the app. So we also needed to integrate with WhatsApp. And finally, there's also an integration with the digital wallet Dana. So we also needed to integrate with the Dana team to provide their services within our app, right? So looking at these number of platforms and also features being developed in each of these apps, we know that these apps are quite complex to develop, which also means like we need lots of resources to actually develop these apps, which I'll explain after this too. So in terms of resources, for Bluebird and Lion Parcel, we can look at the number of people that are involved in the project internally in iSauce. So in each of these projects, we actually had more than 10 team members participating in the project. And out of these 10 team members, there are lots of roles involved. So there's a project manager, which manages the project. There's also a business analyst, which gathers user requirements by doing user interviews and also writing them on the requirements document. There is also designers which design the user interface and the user experience of the app. And there are of course developers, both front end and back end. We at least have one developer working in each of the platform that we are developing on. And finally, we also have QAs, which test the software on each of the platform that it's being developed on. So as you can imagine, there are many people working on the project, and there are various roles with different tasks. So that means like each people need to interact with one another, which makes like the project team's work a bit more complex. And aside from the number of people, we can also look at the time horizon of each of these projects. So for each of these projects, we've done them for more than a year. So that's actually quite a long time to develop an app. And for comparison, like we usually do small scale projects in within a 3-month time horizon. We develop an MVP and launch it, and that's it. Well, for Bluebird and Lion Parcel, after we've developed the MVP, we also still develop other features for both of these apps, which makes like the project scope a whole lot bigger and also more complex to develop. So these data points are describes that the projects that are developed in Isos are both big and complex, and which is why we use a certain type of SDLC and testing activity, which I'll explain after this. So the next section is regarding the testing in an SDLC at Isos. But before I go into the specifics of the processes, I just want to begin with a little bit of theory regarding SDLCs. So if you look up SDLCs in the internet, there's going to be lots of software models that you are going to be finding. There's a waterfall model here. There's also an iterative model here. There's also the V model here. And then there's also the spiral model here. And there are also lots of other types of models out there in the industry, right? And each of these software models has their own specific context that they are fit to be implemented in. So for example, if you have a small scale project or a project that which needs to be done fast and you can afford to do trials and errors, then you might want to opt with this iterative model right here. But if your project is quite big and you can't really do much mistakes or trials and errors, you might want to do this with this waterfall model here, since you can't really iterate once you move from one phase to another. But aside from the different contexts that the software models are fit to be implemented in, they all have some common general steps. So all in all, there are actually 6 steps in an SDLC process. So we start with the planning phase, which is where you get the requirements from the user. So you do user interviews and gather like the requirements. Then after you've gathered the requirements, you do the defining phase where you make the requirements a lot more specific and document those requirements in requirements documents. So there are many terms used to call this requirements document. There are product requirements document. There's also software requirement specification document. But in Icehouse, we call them as functional specification document. And after you make the requirements a bit more specific, you go into the designing phase, which is where you design the system as a whole in general. So you describe the system as a whole before developing it. So in the design phase, you make lots of different diagrams to like describe the system as a whole, design wise, or user interface and user experience wise, and also technical wise, right? And then once you describe the system as a whole with different diagrams, you then begin building the system itself. So this is where you start coding, and this is the first time where you get a working software, which contains like a few functionalities which are done being developed. And once you have a working software, you can go into the next phase, which is the testing phase, where you compare that working software against the requirements that you've defined in the defining and designing phase, and make sure that the software actually meets those requirements. And then once you know the software meets the requirements, you then, and you're ready to launch the app into the market to be used by end users, you go into the final phase, which is the deployment and support phase, where you launch the app into the market and end users start using your software. And while end users are using it, they may encounter problems. And that's where the support comes in, where you help your users solve different problems when they're using your software. And once the app is launched into the market, you might want to iterate on it, since you have like better ideas on how to implement the app. You can actually then restart the SDLC again, right into the planning phase. So that's why here's an arrow pointing into the planning phase here. So that's like the SDLC process in general. But how do we do this SDLC process in Icehouse? So in Icehouse, we actually have three main phases here. We have the define and design phase, or we call them the DND for short. We also have the development phase. And finally, we also have the launch and go live phase. And these three phases here are an adaptation of the Agile and Scrum methodology. So what does Agile and Scrum mean, actually? So Agile and Scrum means that Icehouse develops its software in iterations. And one iteration is equal to 2 weeks of work. And that 2 weeks of work, we call them as sprint, which is a terminology which is commonly used in Scrum methodologies. And also in Icehouse, we also like implement different ceremonials which are used in Scrum methodology too, which I'll explain later. So back to these three main phases here. So what do we do in each of these three main phases? So in order to know like what we do, we can actually compare them with the general SDLC model. So for the DND, it actually maps out with the planning, defining, and design phase. So this is basically where you define the requirements in general. And after that, you go into the development phase where you start building the software and there's a working software. And then you start testing that working software. And then once the software is developed and you're ready to launch it to the market, then you go into the launch and go live phase, which is synonymous with the development and support phase. But before I proceed with my presentation here, I just want to give a quick note that it may seem like all of the requirements in detail are all defined in the DND, but it's not exactly like that. So in the DND, we usually define the requirements like we describe like the software in general. So the software can actually do functions like login, payment, logout, and registration of the user. And we give brief descriptions of those functionalities. But the requirements in terms of when we implement the features, like within a screen, if there's a button, if we push it, where do we go? Like that specific, it's going to be more defined in the development phase and in a meeting we call as sprint grooming, which I'll also explain later. So without further ado, let's go into the first phase of the Icehouse SDLC model, which is the DND. So as I've said before, the DND is where you identify the most critical requirements in a project before starting it. And this is the part of the project where you do user interviews and also workshops to like identify the software in general. But by the end of the DND, you should have three main types of requirements identified in general. So there's the business requirements. There's also the design requirements in terms of user interface and user experience. And there's also the technical requirements for the project. So each of these requirements actually have their own documentations, but I won't go into detail on what those documentations are. I'm just going to describe like what each of these requirements actually describe. So for business requirements, it basically describes like what the software should be able to do. So in business requirements, it will define like the software should have what types of functionalities. It should have like login functionalities, payment functionalities, how it could make an order, or users can log out and register and stuff like that. And also in the business requirements, it also describes like how the software fits into the company's business processes. It describes like how the software supports the company's business processes. So that's why in the business requirements, we have documentations like the business process document and also the FSD, or functional specification document. And once you have a sense of what the software should do, you can then like proceed with defining the design requirements and also technical requirements. So for the design requirements, it basically describes like how the user interacts with the software and how the software reacts to the user. So it describes like how the users can navigate all throughout the app. So that's why there are documentations like UI mockups and also flow-oriented wireframes, which describes like what each screen looks like and also how the user can navigate through each screen within the app. And there's also the UI style guideline, which describes like what types of colors which are being used in the software, the typographies, and also the icons used in the software. And there's also technical requirements here, which describes like what are the different system components to be built in order to support the business requirements we defined earlier. So in technical requirements, we define like these different types of technologies that we're going to be using, the system architecture, and what types of programming languages we are going to be using for each platform that we're going to be developing on. So that's why there are documentations like system architecture, logical entity relationship diagram, and there's also technical specification document. But within the technical requirements, what I'm going to be focusing on is actually the testing strategy, because that is the first testing activity done within a software development project at Icehouse. So within a testing strategy, what is it about? So a testing strategy is basically a document which describes like what I'm going to be testing and how I'm going to be testing during the software project. There are many sections within the documents, but I'm going to be just explaining 4 main sections that I'm usually referring to all throughout the project. So we start with the testing scope, which describes like what features am I going to be testing, what's within my testing scope, and what devices am I going to be testing the software on. So that's why it lists the features that I'm going to be testing. It also specifies like the system integrations that I'm going to be testing to, and what part of that system integration will be tested by Icehouse, what part will be tested by the third party that we're going to be integrating with. And it also describes like the platform, operating system version, and devices that I'm going to be testing on. So for example, if I'm testing an Android app, I should know like what type of device am I going to be using? Is it a smartphone or is it a tablet? And from what manufacturer am I going to be using that device? Is it a device from Samsung, or is it from Lenovo? Is it from Oppo or Xiaomi? And what are the Android versions that I'm going to be testing on? Is it going to be from the earliest version of Android up until the end, or should I just test like the newest version only? So that's like regarding the testing scope. And then there's also a section called testing strategy, which describes like the different types of testing that we do and how I'm going to be doing those types of testing. So there are descriptions regarding like component testing, or how we do, or how developers do their unit testing. There's also descriptions of different functional testing which is being done, like integration testing and system testing, and how to do those. And finally, there's also descriptions regarding the types of non-functional tests that we are going to do, and also like how to do those non-functional tests, like how to do performance tests, what scenarios are we going to be testing, and if we are doing, and whether we are going to be doing security testing or not too. All right, that's testing strategy. And there's also a section called testing entry and exit criteria. So this basically describes like the conditions which I need to fill in order to begin testing or consider testing done. For entry criteria, which is the set of conditions that needs to be fulfilled in order to begin testing. Some examples might include like if I'm testing, uh, when testing the software, if I require some credentials to log in into some type of client website, then then the conditions might state like the credentials which are required should be provided already by the client, for example. For exit criteria, which are the conditions that need to be met before testing is considered done. An example might include like if I'm deploying a software to the end users, then it should include like the test cases that I'm going to be testing should all be tested, and the the bugs the bugs or defects that are present in the software should not be major, critical, or blocker. So no critical, major, or blocker bugs should be still present in the software, for example. And then after that, there's also the task case and defect management section, which describes like how I'm going to be managing task case and also defects. So within Icehouse, we document our task cases and also test results in a tool called TestRail. And when I'm testing and if I found defects, I'm going to log that defect or take note of that defect in a tool we call Jira Project Management. All right. So that's basically like the whole the process in general. And once I know like the software in general in terms of requirements, then we can actually start to go into the next phase, which is the development phase. So within the development phase, this is where we start to get the feel of implementations of the Agile and Scrum methodology. So this is where the sprints actually happen. And what I've got here is an illustration of a typical sprint within Icehouse. And I'm going to be explaining like the different sprint activities which are being done in Icehouse. So let's start from the beginning here. So before we even do a sprint, a week before we do a sprint, we do what we call a sprint grooming meeting. And this is where our business analyst like explains like the requirements that are going to be developed within the next sprints. And we try to clarify those requirements to be as specific as it can. And in this sprint grooming meeting, we also have the developers estimate like how much effort is going to be taken to develop each of the requirements that we're going to be developing within the sprint grooming meeting. And after the sprint grooming meeting on the Friday, a week before we start the sprint, we also have the sprint planning session, which is a meeting where the whole team gathers and we list down like the requirements that are going to be developed on the upcoming sprint, and we prioritize those requirements so that we know which of these requirements need to be finished by the earliest, and which of these can be done later, right? And after the sprint planning meeting on the Monday, we start the sprint. And during the first 1 or 2 days, there won't be any testing yet because there's not really any working software that we could test. So there's only development happening here, right? And after 1 or 2 days, then testing actually starts. And this is why there's a picture here like saying development and testing. And within a sprint, development actually occurs in parallel to testing. So while the developers are developing new features, the QAs are testing the working software which are ready to be tested too, right? So that's like basically like most of the sprint. And by the end of the sprint, we also have what we call a feature freeze and also a regression testing session here. So a feature freeze is basically where where the developers is a time or a day when the developers stop developing new features so that the QAs can do regression testing effectively, so that by the end of the sprint, we have a stable software. So we need to have a stable software by the end of the sprint because usually by the end of the sprint, we hand that working software over to our client and also demo what we worked on for the last sprint to the client. So we need that software when we demo it to the client to be as stable as it can. And aside from demoing the working product, we also submit some QA report, which lists down like the testing result, and also the progress report, which lists down like the features that we developed for the last sprint. And by the end of the sprint, we also have a meeting that we call as sprint retrospective. And this is basically where we gather as a team and we reflect on the problems that we face or the mistakes that we've made during the sprint, and we come up with different plans in order to mitigate those mistakes or problems from happening again in the upcoming sprints, right? And yep, this is basically like what a typical sprint would look like in ISOs. And so what are the testing activities which are done in the sprint? So in terms of testing activities, we actually start the testing activities even in sprint grooming and sprint planning. So within sprint grooming and sprint planning, we start the testing activity by actually testing the requirements. So what does it mean? So when we test a requirement, it means like we question the requirements, whether it's detailed enough and whether there are any undefined edge cases in that requirement. So by detailed enough, it should be clear like how I'm going to be testing it and what the definition of that requirement to be done is. So I know exactly like whether that requirement's done or not. And then by critical edge cases, what I mean here is the edge cases that are essential for that feature to be working. So for example, if I am testing a Bluebird app and there's a Google Maps display and I need to look at where the different drivers are, then it surely needs like internet connection and GPS. So the critical edge case might include like, what if the user doesn't have GPS connection or internet connection? How will the app actually react? So those are like critical edge cases here. And that's regarding sprint grooming. And in sprint planning, we also estimate the testing effort for the upcoming sprint. This is to make sure like we can actually deliver all of the things that we agreed upon to be working on for the upcoming sprint, right? So that's in the beginning. Within a sprint, this is where most of the testing happens in the development phase, because this is where we start like testing the features. And these are the different testing activities done. There's component testing or unit testing done by the developers. And the rest of these testing activities are actually done by the QA. So the QAs in the beginning of the sprint, we create test cases. And then after creating those test cases, we also have test case review, where this is a meeting where the QAs meet with other QAs within the project, and also the BA or business analysts and the developers too, to discuss like to make sure that the test cases that we've created for each of the features actually have sufficient test coverage, and whether some test cases need to be removed because they're redundant, or we actually need to add more edge case test cases into our test cases. All right. And aside from test case review, we also have what we call progression testing. And that's basically where we start testing the features, right? Or testing the requirements on the working software. And for progression testing, we can actually segment it into two types of testing here. We have integration testing and system testing. So integration testing happens when we test a feature which only encompasses a small part of the app. So that means like it's not really dependent on other features or in an end-to-end flow. So for example, if I'm testing a login feature, then that's only going to be requiring like some different small functions within the app, right? So it's not really encompassing the whole app. So that's considered as integration testing. While for system testing, we do that for features of the app, which requires the user to complete an end-to-end flow, right? From the beginning up until a transaction is finished. So for example, if I'm testing a payment, then the app should be able to facilitate user login and also facilitate a user creating an order and paying it right up until the end. So that's going to be considered as system testing. But at the end of the day, we consider them pretty much the same because we're just testing features or requirements, right? Okay. So that's during the sprint, and by the end of the sprint, we also have a regression testing here, where we make sure that the app is stable by testing like the existing features which might be impacted by the new features that we've just developed. And we also have some QA activities here in demo to the client, where usually the QAs are the ones who demo the app to the client. So this is basically like the different testing activities which are done in a development phase within iSales. And this is like what a typical sprint looks like in iSales. So once you've developed like the app, and also you're ready to launch it to the market, and your client also agrees that you're ready to launch, then you can actually proceed to the launch phase here, or the final phase. So in the launch phase, it's not actually as easy as just releasing the app into the market and that's it, to the Play Store and App Store. It's actually the most testing intensive phase in the SDLC process at iSales. This is because when we want to launch an app into the market, we need that app to be as stable as possible. That's because we don't want any major issues happening on production or when the app gets to the hands of the end users. Because if a major issue actually happens when the end users are using it, it could impact the company significantly. So for example, if you launch an app and while the end users are using it, they can't even pay a transaction, then that's going to be impacting the company significantly because the company can't make any revenue because users can pay, and the company might lose some credibility in the market, right? Because they've shipped a product that's not really working at all. So, yep. So that's why launch is the most testing intensive phase. And aside from that, in iSales, we actually have two types of launches or deployments. Right here, we call launches as deployments. And within iSales, there's a front-end deployment and also a back-end deployment. And these processes for each of these types of deployments are similar. But for front-end, it's basically like when we launch an app into the Play Store or Google Play Store or Apple App Store. And that's basically the part of the app that you download into your device and you start using it. That's a part of the app that the users use to interact. And aside from front-end, there's also back-end here. So back-end is the part of the app which isn't really visible to the user, but is the component of the software which executes like the complex operations within the app. So, for example, like data storage or calculating prices and stuff, it's going to be done by the backend. Okay, but in this presentation, I'm going to be explaining more about the front-end deployments because that's been my main focus for the last 2 years at iSales. Okay, so how do we actually launch an app into the market? So in iSales, there are actually 4 main phases that we go through when we want to launch an app into the market. So the first one is being the regression testing on staging environment. So, but before we go into regression testing even, we actually do compile a list of test cases that we want to execute first before we execute the testing. So the test cases basically encompasses the features that are impacted by the new features that are going to be deployed, and also test cases which encompasses also the new features that are going to be deployed too. And yeah, that are going to be deployed to. And yeah, after that's compiled, then we can start to do regression testing on staging environment. And for what do we actually do here in regression testing? So basically, regression testing is where you make sure like the app still functions, even though there are new features added into the app. And when we do regression testing, we do it on a staging environment. So what a staging environment is basically an environment which is very similar to the production environment, but is still contained within internally within the company. So it won't impact any user data or company operations, which are currently occurring between the end users and the company in the market. Okay. So once you're done with regression testing, we consider that there aren't really any major blocker or critical bugs found during regression testing, then we are now ready to go into the next phase, which is the acceptance testing phase, still on staging environment. And in acceptance testing, what we do here is basically we distribute the app to the client and have them test our app. This is to make sure that from the client side that they know that the software that we've made actually meets the requirements that we have outlined in the beginning of the project. And we do that in staging environment still. And once acceptance testing done and the client considers that the software is fit to be launched, then you can proceed into the next phase, which is beta testing on production environment. So in beta testing, what we do here is basically we make sure that the app, especially the critical functionalities of the app, are still working on production environment before we actually release it into the Google Play Store or Apple App Store. So we do beta testing in production environment without releasing the app into the Google Play Store or Apple App Store. So we distribute the app to our QAs by using tools like TestFlight for distributing iOS apps and Firebase for distributing Android apps to the QAs, and the QAs download it and they start to do beta testing on their devices. And after beta testing is done, and we know that the app, the critical functionalities of the app still functions, we can now consider that the app is ready to be launched into the market. And we go into the next phase, which is the smoke testing on production environment. So in this phase, the developer launches the app or releases the app into the Google Play Store and Apple App Store. And once it's there, it's up on the Google Play Store and Apple App Store, our QAs download it into the testing devices, and they start doing smoke testing. And smoke testing is basically the same as beta testing. It verifies that the critical functionalities within the app still functions, and also that the new features are functioning as expected to within production environment. And if there aren't really any major issues found in smoke testing, then we can consider that the testing phases within the deployment phase is actually done. But the deployment itself isn't really done yet, because after this, we usually need to monitor the production environment for the next 3 days or up to a week. And we make sure that there aren't really any major issues happening in the production environment once the app is being used by the end users. And if there aren't really any issues happening in production, then we can actually consider the deployment to be successful here. Okay, and then once the deployment is finished, that's basically like the end-to-end process of how we develop software and also test software in an ISOS SDLC, right? Okay, so to end of my presentation, I'm going to be showing you a real-life example of an app that we've developed in the past. So we have a case study for a consumer app here. So, and what we have here is a timeline of the project from the start of the project up until the MVP is launched. So when the project starts, as I've mentioned before, we start with the DND or define and design process. And it usually takes about 1 month to 1.5 months to complete the DND. So for this particular case, it ends at month 2. So it took 1 month. And during that DND phase, we do these things. So we define requirements, and we also define the project as a whole in terms of the project timeline and also the budget requirements. And also we define the testing strategy, one of the documentations in the DND. And after we've identified the general requirements in the software and the DND is done, we can now proceed with the next phase, which is the development phase. And we start off the development phase with sprints, right? We start off with sprint 0. And this sprint 0 here is we haven't really start developing new features here. We only we do lots of setup for the projects initially in sprint 0. So for the QAs, it might involve like reading the functional specifications document, and we also read like API documentations. We also set up our initial list of test cases on TestRail 2 during sprint 0. And after that, sprint 0 and the preparations done, you can now start developing the features on the subsequent sprints, like sprint 1, 2, 3, and etc. And during these sprints, as I've mentioned before, we develop new features, and while development is happening, we also test those features that are ready to be tested. So we do component testing, integration testing, system testing, and also by the end, we also do a bit of partial regression testing too. Okay, so that's the development phase. And then once we're sure that we are ready to deploy the app into the market, we go into the last phase, which is the launch phase. And for this particular project, we deployed the app in between months 8 and 9. So between sprints 14 and 15. And during this launch phase, as I've mentioned before, we do lots of testing here, like regression testing or system testing. We also do smoke testing, and we also do some non-functional tests, which I haven't mentioned before, like performance tests, to make sure that the app can actually handle the number of users which are going to be using the app, and also security testing the app to make sure that we don't have any security vulnerabilities within the app. And finally, once these test phases are passed, we can then release the app into the Google Play Store and Apple App Store. And after this, the software lifecycle restarts itself. So after this, we can actually either start with the development phase again. So we develop new features after this, continue developing new features, but it also depends on the market, or the project conditions. So for example, if there's actually a very new feature that the client wants to be developed, and we haven't defined it yet in our initial DND, then we might have another DND after we launch the MVP here to define the requirements of that new features in general before proceeding with developing the new features. Yeah. So that's basically like the end-to-end process of an SDLC at iCELS, and also how testing activities are done in the solver. And this is the end of my presentation. So yeah, thank you for listening and for your attention. I hope that this presentation is useful to you all. And yep, I think we can start with the Q&A section now, and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.